Dear Joshua, it's great to have you on board. Greetings from Berlin, I think to Scotland, right?
Yes, absolutely. I'm calling in from Edinburgh today.
Nice. Nice to meet you. I'm so excited for your thoughts and for your keynote and for your little speech right now. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much. And thank you very much for inviting me along to speak today about Scotland's data-driven destinations. I'm Joshua Ryan-Saha. I am the Director of Travel Technology for Scotland and also the Director of Tourism Tech at the Edinburgh Futures Institute. The Edinburgh Futures Institute is part of the University of Edinburgh. And today, in my presentation, I'm going to talk about a few of the use cases over the last 2 years where we have started to use data more in tourism destinations. So the first thing, a little bit more about me. The Travel Technology Cluster has been up and running for about 18 months. Before that, I was leading projects at the university around data and AI in tourism. And I have a background working at Nesta, an innovation agency in the UK, on a TV series called BBC Horizon, and also with some experience in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So Travel Technology for Scotland, very quickly, it's our business cluster focused on travel technology. So all of the great companies in Scotland that work in technology and tourism and hospitality. We have an aim to grow more, get more great tech companies coming out of Scotland with an aspiration to be of a similar size to some of the great other European travel tech hubs. And why Scotland? Well, of course, Skyscanner is based here. We have a growing technology sector, but also fantastic AI research, not least at the University of Edinburgh, but also across Scotland. So that's why we think we're in a really good place to do more in travel tech. And we already have about 133 travel technology companies in our community. So our aims are to do more cutting edge research and applied business activity in travel tech. So, like I said, what I'm going to do today is explore a few of our research projects, a few of our companies that are trying to use data in a lot more interesting and practical way to support the tourism and hospitality industry. And what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about what we did during the pandemic and just after. The second part is a little bit about what we're trying to do with data around climate change. And then the final bit is how we're trying to support small and medium-sized tourism businesses in their use of data, and a few ideas around that. So first of all, when we recall the start of the pandemic, and it was such a terrible time and we didn't really know what was going to happen, we were thinking in Edinburgh about how do we continue to potentially host festivals during the pandemic. And in Edinburgh, of course, we have the Fringe Festival, which has about 3 million tickets over 1 month. We also have the International Festival, Film Festival, and so on. And what we decided to do was look at the data of ticket purchasing behavior across Edinburgh and then map that against what we knew at the time about infection spread so that we could start to plan how we could potentially create and plan festivals that are not going to create a big surge in cases of coronavirus. So what I have here and what I can share is a map that we had that could show the movement of people and how that may have led to surges. And what we did with that is start to plan out the locations where we could host festival events without leading to a surge in the virus. Second of all, we started to think about how we could use data to influence Scottish government policy around the support required for small, medium enterprises. So we looked at the data going back from previous disasters or parts of time where there was a major collapse in tourism and started to understand and identify the businesses that were of most risk of going bankrupt during the crisis so that we could hyper-target some of that work. That is done by Dr. Galina Andreeva at the University of Edinburgh. Now, another key question that we all had was when will visitors return and where will our visitors be coming from? So we created a dashboard so that the small businesses of Edinburgh and of rest of Scotland could start to identify the way they could target their marketing spend by looking just at Google search and Wikipedia search from different locations that were searching for Scotland terms or hotels in Scotland. And then we would map it and make that dashboard freely available for all of the small, medium enterprises to look at. That dashboard was really useful, especially in Edinburgh, in terms of hyper-targeting where they wanted to try and bring people back from. And it would also look at consumer confidence index so that we could understand both where consumers were confident coming back and there was good search behavior. Now, another part of what we tried to do was we knew that during the pandemic and the sort of long tail, which we are still in post-pandemic, has been around the focus on local visitors. So for Scotland, that could be hyper-local. It could be the people within the city or the destination itself, or it could be from the region, the nation, or of course, the whole of the United Kingdom. So what we started to think about was what we could do in particular around our festivals again. So this map I'm showing here is a map of Edinburgh, and each of those dots are places where festival events were usually held. And then you can see the ticket buying behaviour from the different sub-regions of Edinburgh. So where it is a darker purple, that is where there's a lot of ticket buying behaviour. Where it is a red, that is where there's not a great deal of ticket buying behaviour. And then where it has a red outline, you can see the places that are typically from areas that are of lower social economic advantage. And what we try to do with this is to create programs to really target those areas to get more local people from more deprived areas going to festival events so that we could target and advertise and then create investment propositions so that we could get more local people coming to our events. And this has been a really great tool. The other part of work we also tried to do was do better forecasting. Now, this was a problem for us before the pandemic. Businesses, government, everyone wanted to know what was going to happen in terms of visitors coming to Scotland. We didn't have the best data around this. So we started to look at different proxies from visitor attractions or hotel revenue data to think about, well, how can we do this and how can we predict? So that could influence inventory or staffing. But critically, after the pandemic, past behavior was much less of a predictor for what was going to happen. We didn't know whether past behavior was going to be really influential. So we had to construct a model that really put a higher weight on immediate data, so data that's coming in. And again, here we fell to Wikipedia search and Google search. And if you can see some of the peaks here, what we have is a big peak during the festival, but also we were able to accurately predict a big peak around the demand of COP26, of course, which was held in Glasgow. And that increased demand has not just been in urban centres. In East Lothian, which is one of our beach areas of Scotland, there was also a massive surge in demand, over 1 million extra visitors a year. So we have installed sensors and developed an app and a dashboard so that we could start to identify when these beaches were getting really, really busy, relay that to the app to change consumer behaviour, but also relay that information directly to the staff at local councils and park rangers to help alleviate those pressure points and divert people to places that were less busy. We've done that in more places, and two great companies in Scotland in our Traveltech community, both Wilderness Insights and Whereverly, have started to do that in different regions, from Orkney all the way to our national parks and our beautiful West Highland Way, so that we could do better planning for the peaks and troughs of visitor numbers. Now, going into the area of climate change, we were really happy to see in Scotland that Skyscanner was able to start putting the carbon emissions from flights as part of their platform so that you could rank based on that. And we know that's really, really important because that's a critical way of changing behavior. But it's not just Skyscanner. We have a startup company, a great one called Electrek Explorer, which is mapping all of the electric vehicle charging points across Scotland so that you can curate particular itineraries using an electric vehicle across some of the amazing highlands and islands of Scotland. It's also using this map to incentivize small businesses to start implementing new vehicle charging stations in Scotland to make it even easier for electric vehicles to navigate. Another one of our companies, Fuse Mobility, has been working with the national parks again to better create tools that allow people who are planning trips to do so in a way that is more environmentally friendly. The Cairngorms National Park and Loch Lomond and Trossachs have done research which said that the biggest contributor to climate change was the emissions coming from transport to and from the destination. So this travel planner developed by Fuse Mobility is doing a little bit like what Skyscanner was doing. It is putting a carbon weighting to each of the different types of journey you can take to and within the national park. And that is really helping influence how people travel around. So there are some really great ideas and projects, and a lot of the time it is universities or it is businesses working on the behalf of these small, medium enterprises. But what we do also know is that a lot of these tourism companies either have data that they can't access, or the data they can access on their own as a business isn't going to give them enough value. And one of the things we're really wanting to do is to start working with these small businesses so that they can take advantage of their own data, but also bring together their data with business partners across the destination, analyze it collectively so that they can have insights that can be really, really important. And they can be important in a number of ways. One of the problems that we see sometimes is they're not operating in an efficient manner. They're not opening at times where it could be of peak traffic, or perhaps that they can more better bring in staff or inventory so that they are maximizing their profits. Now, what we have seen in agriculture in Scotland is something called Smart Rural, where a group of agricultural businesses have come together to share data and data technologies as part of a cooperative. And we want to start doing that in tourism. And in fact, we have a few projects we're doing that at the moment. And what we see and what we envisage is data trusts, where safely small businesses can bring their data together into a shared data repository, and they can collectively hire data analysts or data scientists to work on that data, providing insights back to the individual businesses, but also a collective insight so people can understand what is actually going on in their neighborhood and create new dashboards or new data tools. The first area we've started with this is both with visitor attractions, but also with hotels and restaurants that are really suffering at the moment from staff shortages. And they're using that data so that they can more specifically set their schedules relating to that collective demand. Now, we've also been working with other universities across the UK. And here's one report where we're able to start to model how businesses can collaborate using their shared data so that they can choose collectively which restaurants can potentially open on which days based on their demand, but also they can then act to refer their customers to other restaurants if it doesn't make sense for them financially to open that day. So this is an emergent area that we're trying to work in, trying to do more in, and I would certainly love to hear more from people who are watching me today if they are interested in what we're doing or have some great examples from different parts of the world that are doing this type of work. So the culmination of this and all of these different projects of research, or where it has been small companies doing it, is that Scottish Government and Visit Scotland have announced that we are developing a Scottish Tourism Observatory. Now, what that is going to be doing is bringing these disparate data sets from sensors or from commercial vendors or from small businesses themselves, and start to develop new projects, experiment with even more of these types of projects so that we can be a truly data-driven destination. So thank you so much for listening to me today. I've really enjoyed giving this presentation. And I know that some of these projects are quite early research. What I would ask for any of you watching is to get in touch with me or my colleague Leslie on the emails here, so that we can potentially collaborate around new exciting applications of data and artificial intelligence in the tourism sector, in particular in Scotland and some of the rural destinations that we are really trying to experiment with. So thank you so much for your time, and I really look forward to hearing more of the great speakers from today's talk.
Thank you, Joshua. Thank you so much for your insights. Data, data, data. It's really a hot topic, and I think your inbox will explode with further questions. Thanks for joining us today at ITBBerlin Convention.